Oh, oh, there it is, even on my left side. Good evening. Welcome to the January 17, 2024 postponed but regular meeting of the Ashland Parks and Recreation Commission Commissioners. So I'm calling the meeting to order, and the first order of business is approval of minutes from November 8th, 2023. And I'm looking for a motion. Go ahead. What's the motion?
I move we approve the minutes of APRC business session November 8th, 2023 and APRC business session December 4th, 2023 as presented.
December 6th.
Okay, it's moved and second. All in favor, say aye, please. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, additions and deletions to the agenda. Well, surprise, surprise, we actually have a couple. The commissioners received a draft resolution Monday, I believe, and that will be, the public will be able to see that on the screen here shortly, but we're going to add that to the agenda as an information-only item, and that will be become second. Well, that would be after the Rogue World Music item will be the resolution, which relates to the open space map, which is the item following. The other item we're going to change is we're going to put the chair, vice chair elections. We're going to add that, put that at the top of the list, because Steph Steffer has to leave the meeting, or may have to leave the meeting early, depending on how long we are. And she requested that she be able to vote on that item. So those are the two changes I'm aware of. And next on the agenda is public forum, and I don't have anyone listed as speaking on public forum. So, and I don't see anyone in the audience that's raising their hand. So I'm going to move forward here. The next item is consent agenda, and it's acknowledgement of, the only thing on the consent agenda is acknowledgement of RDAC minutes from October 19, 2023. Looking for a motion.
I move to acknowledge the consent agenda. Second.
Moved and second. All in favor, aye? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, next on the agenda is the director's report. And so Interim Director Leslie Eldridge, go ahead.
Okay, let me cue this up. Nancy, we don't seem to have the image here. Would you mind checking with someone back? Good evening, commissioners. Here to provide the APRC Interim Director's Report for the month, starting with administration news. As you're aware, there have been some staff changes. So Senior Services Supervisor Eileen Glatt is now enjoying her retirement, and we're thrilled to have Natalie Mettler is now serving as Interim Senior Services Supervisor, and Shannon Holt as the Interim Senior Services Coordinator. Administrative Analyst Tara Kewell has moved on. She's moved up to Eugene and has taken a position with Lane County Parks. And so we will be posting an admin analyst position before the end of the week. Keep our fingers crossed on that. And as far as legislative initiatives go, excited to announce that Alcohol in Parks Ordinance is now in the Ashland Municipal Code. Parks Hours Ordinance last night was approved unanimously by City Council, will be amended in the Ashland Municipal Code, and the trails and open space map will be presented tonight to you for your final approval. Senior Services had a widely attended holiday party. About 100 patrons attended right before Christmas. The Rotary Club of Ashland and Shop and Cart provided gifts, free gifts and cards to participants, and there was a Ollie's French caroling class, performed familiar Christmas carols. The sponsor was the Village of Valley View. They provided refreshments. Oh, I meant to include the picture of Commissioner Lewis. I know you were there, some great shots of you. So great success. For the Recreation Division, we are thrilled to announce that after months and months of work and preparation, we are moving away from, is it ActiveNet, and to a more streamlined, functional platform called SmartRec. And of course, all these software packages need to have names too, sometimes known as Amelia. But Deputy Director Dials will be presenting in February to tell you more about this. This green page on your screen, if you got your play guide in the mail or if you looked at your play guide, this is a large page within your play guide, and it shows you how to access SmartRec and how to use it. And yes, there is an app for that. This will not only hopefully improve the experience of registering for recreational programs, but it'll improve and make possible for us to all sorts of different functionality, as well as a bunch of different data gathering and analysis functions that'll be very handy in the future. So the system rolled out as planned on January 3rd and is functioning now, and staff is for the most part trained up, and we're just working on populating it and learning how to use it for the different functions as we move forward. Just a reminder, the Oak Knoll Golf Course continues to be closed on Tuesdays through the month of January. Starting February, the regular hours will commence. As an update on the long-awaited Oak Knoll management contract, the contract has been drafted, it has been reviewed by legal and finance, and will very soon is ready for review by the selected management company, Golf Automation. So hopefully that will continue moving forward. A mix of not so happy news here, but something important for the commissioners to be aware of. We continue to struggle with incidents of vandalism and theft. Mid-November, January, and a couple different events in January, we had pretty high damage, high loss incidents. So in November, we had a break-in to the North Mountain Park shop. You can see there the sort of makeshift repair that was, so basically folks cut into the chain link fence, stole some equipment. They stole a chainsaw. At the moment, the valuation of loss was about $1,000. And then, of course, the repairs need to get done. Around the beginning of January, we had a second incident of Bluebird Park where landscaping, thousands of dollars of landscaping was destroyed, pruned, cut, ripped out. All of these were reported to the police. That was a damage valued at $2,500, and it was the second time that had occurred at Bluebird Park. And then most recently, over the weekend of January 6th and 7th, the Lithia Park shop assumed they jumped the fence. The gas tanks have locks on, the gas caps have locks on them, so 2 of the vehicles had had holes drilled in the gas tanks and the gas was siphoned, and 1 had cut fuel lines. So we are down 3 vehicles from our fleet, which is a big challenge for us. So we're currently working with the city and with Public Works to come up with a plan for fleet replacements, which we had an aging fleet in the beginning. So, and I might add, the Lithia Park damage was the worst in the repairs. That's estimated at about $5,000. There was some machinery stolen as well. So we're looking at some steps here to increase security, plans for cameras, which I think we already received, right? Improved fencing, more lighting, particularly at the Lithia Park Shop. It's a pretty dark corner of Lithia. And then with some of our new hires, we will hopefully be having at least an occasional nighttime presence of staff moving through those areas. So just want to keep you informed on some of our struggles in this regard. Feel free to interrupt me on any of these items too, by the way. For trails, the Alice in Wonderland Ridge Trail, sometimes I call this the Alice in Wonderland Complex because it can get complicated, but I tried to provide a map here. As you may recall, there have been 2 new reroutes, one for pedestrians and one for bikes, that were built on easements that were secured many years ago to go around 2 private property parcels. So if you can see, you cannot see my cursor. You can see 2 purple squares that say private property, and you can see the red trail, that's the mountain bike reroute, Mimsy, Alice in Wonderland. Currently it's called Alice in Wonderland, that name may change. The blue is the pedestrian reroute, and the hatch marks is what has been the historic, traditional, what I would call the Alice in Wonderland Ridge Trail. It's wide, it sits on top of the ridge, and it travels down and eventually hooks up to BTI or Bandersnatch. That trail has been closed. So if you look at the bottom left hand of the screen, you'll see that Jason Minica, our open space and forestry supervisor, has worked with the landowners to block off access to that. And signage has been put up, social media has spread the word, and there's that fencing is on both sides, so both the north and the south sides of those 2 private property parcels. So it's a fairly large change to one of the most popular trails in the watershed. Hopefully it's fairly clear when you're walking from the White Rabbit Trailhead. It's very clear that you're going to go off to the left on the beautiful new single track, either on bike or a ped, and you'll come back to merge onto what was the historic trail when you finish. It actually affords really beautiful views of the valley. Yes, Chair Lon.
Are those trails both multi-directional, the new trails?
The pedestrian trail is multi-directional. The mountain bike trail is one-way downhill, and that is solely because at this time there is no legal way to be going uphill from the bottom there. So there's been some discussion. There's actually a lot of discussion within the Trails group about how to continue modifying that area to allow for uphill travel, to continue to separate bikes and peds, and maybe to add some elements to that trail now that the Palin, was called the Palin property, has been purchased by the parks. That allows us some more options. We're also trying to work with the Forest Service, who own the property at the sort of top of Alice in Wonderland Trail. But all that is complicated moving parts that we'll hope to see in the future. Okay.
Excuse me,
Yes.
one other point. We have, I think this is really time for celebration again, because we've completed in the last year or year and a half, we've completed one new trail, the Wasabi trail system, and now this change, which was the Alice in Wonderland, which may get renamed, but it's put in a legal location. And so those are all really good things to make our trail system better. And they've been accomplished recently. A lot of work from the private groups that have Rogue Valley Mountain Bike Association and the Ashland Woodland Trails. So this is along with Parks and Recreation. So this has really been this is something we can be proud of that we've accomplished. So thank you for bringing this to our attention.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's so fun to go up there and see how the trails are taking shape. And I would add that the Liberty Street property, our crew has done a great job working with contractors to do some great fuels management on that property. And it is just a beautiful place. And I run into people all the time that are just thrilled that it's protected for folks to connect to those neighborhoods and to enjoy that connectivity.
Question? I'm wondering with the Caterpillar Trail that's above the parking lot to Red Queen, is it possible to do a little better job, because that's a multimodal trail. There are walkers and bikes on that. There are some spots in it now that it's really hard. It's so curved. It's really hard to walk on it.
So that trail is Forest Service land, and
Jeff McFarland fixed it the last time.
well, there's nothing preventing us from working with the Forest Service to do trail maintenance, and AWTA and RVMBA do lots of trail work. In terms of user, are you talking about user conflict in terms of?
No, I'm not talking about that at all. I'm talking about
the sharp turns.
If you're on that trail and you're a walker, there are parts of it, and that's where a lot of seniors walk, that little loop thing. And if we could just be sure that it can accommodate walkers as well as bikes, because the bikes dig into the hillside and make it really hard to walk unless you just keep maintaining it. And I go there every day, so I kind of know what it's like.
Oh yeah, I'm on the trail quite a bit too, and we certainly can take that up with our partners
it's just
and
that
talk
one little
to.
part that's between the two groups, and the bikers are generally very, very polite to the walkers, and the walkers to the bikes. But there are just 2 or 3 spots there that really need to be
And flattened out,
flattened out a little bit. That's all.
Okay, perfect. Thank
Not
you.
a big ask.
Okay. Moving on, you may have noticed that the what I'm calling the central stone staircase up to Ashland Japanese Garden has received a little bit of a facelift. We made a decision to reopen those steps, and so they're not quite open yet because we need to install a railing that is similar to the other stone steps right across from the pickleball courts. But you can see sort of at the bottom, we've created a flagstone landing on the bottom, and on the top we'll be installing a railing. And that was done to sort of, we're a bit in limbo as to whether, what to do about those stone steps, and it had come to the commissioners previously. I don't think a decision had been made. There are grand plans, and certainly there are recommendations from the Japanese garden designer, Toru, who would like to see a different type of arrangements. We're also, we've also consulted with and are working towards establishing ADA access to the garden. So we made a decision to make a low-cost entrance. People were using these stairs anyway. They're kind of going around, walking up the hill. So we decided to open the steps. We put a watch your step sign there. We'll be installing a railing and open that up. And it will basically just reduce the eyesore that it was when it was flagged off and roped off. And it doesn't mean that this can't be changed in the future, and it may very well have to. We have a crosswalk in the wrong place. We really need to look at the entire accessibility and entrances to the Japanese garden when we get to the place where we have the staff and the resources to kind of really take a holistic look at that. So that's what's happening there. I don't know why I'm inordinately excited about this, but we have a brand new drinking fountain at the Lithia Park Playground. It's got 2 levels. You can fill your water bottle. It's got a place to feed your dog, to get water for your dogs. And we were able to save quite a bit of money by doing an in-house pipe insulation. That the cost of the non-freeze plumb parts is incredibly high, but staff has been able to to do their own installation, and they swear it works better than buying the high-cost materials. So shouldn't be freezing. You should be able to use it at any temperature if you take your kids to the park and it's 31 degrees. Yes, Chair Long.
I was going to bring something up to staff level, but since you brought it up here, I'm going to bring it up here, which is, these are great, with one exception. The low height, I've watched kid after kid, where their chin comes up to here, they can't use it. And there's no step, but I think, what I'm wondering is do they make it with the lower one lower? Kids don't have any trouble bending over, but they really can't reach over the top. So I would hope that there might be a more younger kid friendly height. So I would ask that staff look into that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I wonder if we could put some sort of a little step or
for the ones you have, that would work. But I think if there's an option, it'd be better to get the right size. But a step for the ones you have makes sense.
make sure those littles aren't drinking from the dog water faucet. Yeah, okay, perfect. Oh, look at that eye test for you, sorry. I put this up because, so this is the shelter at Gardenway Park, and I asked Jason Minica, our open space and forestry supervisor, can you give me a little more detail on what you did? And I just put all those words up to show that this was actually a fairly large project that took a lot, and it took this much work in order to save a lot of money. These shelters are incredibly expensive, and this is the kind of lengths that our staff go to save money, to rehabilitate an entire shelter in order to save what would be like a $30,000 expense. So they replaced all the down posts and the support structures. They added bracing. They removed all the old shingles and rotted plywood. They removed the fascia, and we're taking mold out, replacing plywood, pretty much replaced the roof, and then the Lions Club is going to be, I think they were painting it today. So it really looks fantastic, and it was really a blood, sweat, and tears thing, whereas in a lot of places they would just buy a replacement. Okay, that's my director's report.
Thank you. I'm going to interject something that I was remiss at the beginning of the meeting. We are very fortunate to have a second liaison for the Ashland Parks and Recreation Commissioners meetings, and just in general a liaison. Eric Hansen has been our liaison, and now there are actually two, and the second one is Jeff Dale, and he's sitting here with us. So I want to welcome you, Jeff, to the to our meeting and your new position as liaison to APRC. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, on behalf of Mayor Graham and the council, we were assigned 2 liaisons just to be able to provide that much more communication and continuity. And I'm happy to be here. I selected this one, and probably in small part to keep Councilor Hansen in line.
Good luck with that.
Thank you for being interested in this. That's great.
Thank you.
Communication is important.
Okay, next on the agenda, on our revised agenda, is election of 2024 chair and vice chair. I think it's pretty obvious what the roles are, and I'm not going to enumerate what was in our packet. And I'm going to open us up for nominations for chair, and actually I'm going to go ahead and make a nomination. I nominate Jim Bachman as chair. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And second by Commissioner Lewis. Okay. I don't know, I guess to make it the nomination, I would just say that I think change is good. I'm wanting to step back just a half step anyway, and this is an opportunity to do that. And Jim has, I think, shown his ability to lead us and to, in an even-handed way. And so I'm hoping that we will elect him for this position. I don't know if any, Commissioner Lewis, did you want to speak to your motion?
Other than, I personally have chaired hundreds of public meetings, and the nice thing is you don't have to make a motion. You get other people to make motions, and I think you're going to be excellent at that job.
Anyone else want to speak to the motion?
I would just say that I have a lot of respect for Mr. Bachman, and I know that he has a lot of experience in the field of hiring and human relations, and since that's something that we're going into, I think he'd make a strong leader. Is that better?
That's way better.
Did you hear me now? Did you want me to repeat that, or?
Sure, I don't think that.
Okay. I think Commissioner Bachman would be an excellent choice. And I think he has experience in some of the issues that are really important to us. Thank you.
Sorry, but I really do want the
I know.
I want
have a very
the
soft
public
voice,
to hear our words of wisdom.
Yeah.
Okay, so roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Lewis,
Yes.
Commissioner Bachman,
Abstain.
You can vote.
Commissioners,
You can vote.
you can vote. Oh, okay. Commissioner Lant,
Yes.
Commissioner Steffinger,
Yes.
Commissioner Adams,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay, now we're entertain votes for vice chair.
It sounded like when you said half step that you might be willing to continue in that role. Is that right?
Sure.
Okay, well then I nominate Rick Long for that position.
And do we have a second?
I will second that as well. Second that.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Let's see. Commissioner Steffinger, would you like to speak to the motion?
Sure. I think that right now, again, transitioning to a new leader, it would make sense to have that kind of support system there for you. Because we're going into a situation where we have a lot of new people, and it would be good to have that level of knowledge of the past. So you'll be a good help.
Commissioner Lewis.
Yes, and I also have complete confidence that Commissioner Lant could take over the chair position at any point in time.
Anyone else want to make a comment on the motion?
I'll just say that I'm very happy that Commissioner Lant, who has an encyclopedic organizational knowledge, is not stepping too far back.
Okay, if no other comments, let's have a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Steffinger,
Yes.
Commissioner Adams,
Yes.
Commissioner Lewis,
Yes.
Commissioner Bachman,
Yes.
Commissioner Lant.
Well, I'm going to vote yes, because I don't think that we should be abstaining when, but I defer to now the chair who chose to do that, but I am going to not. So anyway,
Motion passes.
and so at this point, our newly elected chair will take over the meeting. So welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for your literal vote of confidence. The next item is did we add the resolution to the end or the second item?
It will be after Rogue World.
Okay, after Rogue World. Okay, the next item is Rogue World Music rebranding and expansion. It's an information-only item, and our interim director, Leslie Eldridge, will launch us
Actually, I'm gonna launch us.
She's gonna,
So I want to introduce Anna Byers, who is the Executive Director of Rogue World Music, and Lonnie Flora, who is our Recreation Manager. And the partnership that we have had with Rogue World Music started about 8 years ago or longer. And this event and this program has built over the years, and we're really excited to have them here to talk about it tonight.
Thank you so much, Rachel, and forgive me. My name is Anna Byers.
and if I can just add one little thing, we would like to keep this to around 10 minutes, just to keep the program moving.
Oh, I actually have to serve in my role as Talent City Councilor in 9 minutes in talent, so I'm going to fly through this. I had been hoping to get to go a little earlier. So the Ashland World Music Festival has been in existence since 2016. This year we are rebranding to be the Rogue World Music Festival. This is a timeline that's been shared in a packet with you. There's a lot of text. It's available to all of you. What I would really like to point out are the guiding principles of this event that we worked with APRC staff in a steering committee that was mainly populated by community members, musicians, and culture-bearing community leaders, that this event continue to be an inclusive, accessible opportunity for community members to gather and connect, to create a draw that is both local, regional, and now we are looking even further, Pacific Coast wide, for tourists to bring them to this area. And then to be very representative of the diverse array of cultures that are not only here within our Rogue Valley community, but within Oregon. And of course, to take advantage of the beautiful amenities that are available to us, not just in Ashland, but also Medford and now Talent. Our expansion goals are one that, first, to create a circular exchange amongst our communities. Each one here in the Valley has a real identity of its own, and we want to create that day visitor that's coming to Ashland, to Talent, to Medford from throughout the wider Rogue Valley, Jackson County, Josephine County, and the Southern Oregon region. And then secondarily, to create an event that acts as an anchor event, working with Travel Ashland, with Travel Southern Oregon, with Travel Medford, and with Travel Oregon, to create a destination that draws folks to this valley to spend their money here during the shoulder season for, some of the bigger tourist draws that we're all aware of. So as you can see, festival expansion, there are a number of parts to it. Again, this slide is in your packet. I could read it all, but I'm moving quickly. I do want to point out, though, that one of the key aspects of this is that we want to leverage the community engagement and revitalization and economic development opportunities that this event creates, and align it with goals that have been identified by the City of Ashland, by Ashland Parks and Recreation Commission, by the Talent Business Association, by the City of Talent, by Travel Medford, Downtown Medford Association, and Travel Medford. I am noticing as I'm looking at all of these strategic plans that there's a lot of overlap with all of these communities, and there are ways for us to pull those threads and serve all of those goals, magnifying the output of a finite amount of resources that we have to commit to this event. So this, I realized you all don't hold the calendar of events for the festival in your head. So I included this in your packet as well. You can see we've got a day with events in Medford, a day with events in Talent, and 2 days with events in Ashland. Of course, with the main stage events centering around performances all day long in the Butler Bandshell in Lithia Park. Our attendance has been growing since 2016. This last year in 2023, we saw a doubling of attendance all the way up to about 5,000 folks. We're expecting a very conservative estimate of 8,000 people to attend all of the events throughout the festival in 2024, and an increase to 10,000 attendees by 2025. This is very conservative. I am actively being contacted to be included in publications, features, and things like the AAA Oregon and Idaho travel guide for their March and April edition, which reaches 550,000 homes. We're being featured in the Oregonian. We're being featured by Bay Area news coverage and press. And this is people contacting us. This is not even the marketing plan that we implement to bring people to town. We will be piloting the new policy that allows alcohol in Lithia Park, working very closely with Ashland Parks and Recreation staff. And as you can see, this is the delineation of roles between Rogue World Music staff, APRC staff. We're excited to get this going. We're excited to be the guinea pig for you all. And we're really glad that we get to work so closely with APR staff on this. Lonnie, did you have something you wanted to add about this?
I could make my points at the end.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And then we need some support in this expansion. It will cost Rogue World Music approximately $80,000 to produce this festival this year and approximately $100,000 to produce this festival next year. That being said, we feel like it's worth it. It is completely aligned with our mission. It is our biggest program. We fund almost all of it through grant writing. If we can begin working towards other huge areas of support, our sponsorship is growing. We now have sponsors contacting us, asking if they can support it, but still, that will take a while to catch up with the cost as we are working to bring in Grammy-nominated musicians, Rolling Stone featured musicians, musicians that actually create a huge draw for people to town. And so I'm asking for your support, the commission's support, as we move into this expansion. I would love to have a template letter of support to submit with grants that is signed by the Ashland Parks and Recreation Commission. I would love for the commission to make a recommendation to the Ashland City Council to approve a similar template for us to include as well. It's representation of support like this that is so meaningful to foundations, especially when they're asking for community buy-in, which is very important. And then I also invite all of the commissioners to attend at least the Ashland events this year. Come and see what the feeling is like. See the parks in use in this unique collaboration between nonprofit and municipal entities. We are very unique in this state and on this West Coast for this type of event and this type of collaboration, not just between a nonprofit and a municipal entity singular, but the fact that we're moving into a multi-municipal collaboration that is guided and spearheaded by a nonprofit. It is unprecedented, and I actually have that in writing from the head of the Oregon Cultural Trust in response to a grant that I submitted. So thank you for your time. I'm gonna speed all the way to talent, and it was lovely to see you all. Have a good night.
Don't speed.
Thank you very much. Drive carefully.
I did want to make a few points as APRC staff in this collaboration. First, with the festival expansion, with Rogue World Music leading these efforts, our park amenities and programs are being advertised through the Valley and all the other outlets of marketing that isn't relying on any additional staff time or resources from our budget. So this is improving our branding. This is inviting our neighbors locally, regionally, and really beyond to come and enjoy our parks and amenities in our programs. So the other thing to point out is how much we're going to benefit from piloting the alcohol policy alongside the planning of this event. So these planning efforts, which we've already begun, is giving staff valuable experience in what it's going to take to meet the various requirements, OLCC, making sure that we stick to the policy itself and the on-site management details of this policy. This is going to allow APRC staff to support other partners and bringing other events into our parks and our facilities to be able to help them navigate getting alcohol service, making events more popular, getting more people out in the parks, having more collaboration with more businesses, seeing more success. That was really the main points that I wanted to make. So I will do my best to answer any other questions, and thank you for listening.
Commissioner Lewis?
Yeah, and Lonnie, are you recommending that we send a letter of support?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, good.
And what I would recommend is that staff can draft that letter and get it signed by the commission chair, if you all are.
Another point.
Okay. Follow up?
And just a historical note, this is really the beginnings of Lithia Park, is having events and people come from all over the region to the Chautauqua series, if people are familiar with that. It was really the birth of the park, and so this fits in so perfectly. And then I got to watch my granddaughter graduate at the band shell, and it was a thing of beauty. So it's like, what a wonderful facility to have. Thank you.
I think that this helps show how parks are working with the rest of the city and the council in terms of looking at our economic base and things to bring people into our, all kinds of people, you know, diversity. That's important to us. So I really recommend doing this. I do wonder though, are we going to have world regional beers? Are we going to have world beers?
Well, that would be up to the producer of the event.
I'm supportive of as well. I think this is a wonderful event. I think I love the reference back to our roots of the Chautauqua series, and I agree with you from what I've read about that time. This is right in line with our roots. Coming up on 100 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. And yeah, so I think it's wonderful. I love the idea of staff drafting a letter of support with robust support from the commission.
That actually segues into my question, which is staff drafts, then does it need to come back to us for approval of the letter before it goes out? Or is this such a minor thing that we don't need to do that?
I don't think it requires a full commission involvement.
Theoretically, we could make a motion along the lines of directing staff to draft a letter, and that we as a commission approve it pending approval by our new chair. That we sort of trust him, as we can officially designate him as the decision maker in regards to the language in the letter.
But this is an information only item.
Yeah. I think you have your direction.
Yeah.
Which is, this doesn't rise to the level of needing full commission involvement. Does anybody object to that? Okay. Thank you, Lonnie. I think this is a remarkable collaboration between municipal government and in this case, an MPO, but partners in the community, and it just gets better every year. So thank you. Thank the whole recreation staff for the work they do, and I'm looking forward to attending.
Great. Thank you.
Next item is also information only. Am I in the right order now?
Yes.
In conjunction with approving or taking up approval of the open space trails map and the technical document supporting that, we thought we would be, now Vice Chair Lant and I, that a draft of a resolution to further show our commitment to the idea of supporting the city's development of pedestrian and multimodal trails was in order. So this document was drafted, and it's up on the screen now, and it's the commissioners have had it for several days, but it's not in the packet. I don't think I'm going to read it because it's a draft and it's information only. So I'm going to wait to read it into the record if we pass it in February on the 7th, which is when it comes back for that. So I'm going to solicit now just comments from commissioners on whether you see major changes necessary in this document. Commissioner Seffentree.
I think I've already given you a written feedback about the document, and I've read it and tried to actually go to some of the areas so I could kind of visualize it. And I think it fits well with our goals to reduce emissions, and I support it.
And they'll be able to read the entire thing online on the screen, right? So I want to be sure the public has a chance to, take a screenshot for the people at home or whatever, so they have a copy of it. I just don't want to take time to read it.
Well, this is the first half, and just for folks just joining us, this is a draft resolution that is really responding to the concern amongst the community and some of the climate action groups and advisory committees, as well as Safe Streets for All, that the central bike path and other bike ped trails aren't specifically as parcels called out on the Parks, Trails, and Open Space map, which is next on our agenda item. So this resolution, it calls out what I can explain sort of in more detail, that the central bike path itself is identified in the Transportation System Plan, which goes through both the Transportation and Planning Commissions. It is also identified in the Trails Master Plan, which also goes through Transportation and Planning Commissions and is in our Ashland Comprehensive Plan. So, and finally, the Parks, Trails, and Open Space map also identifies the central bike path through what a GIS layer that is called the Trails Master Plan Corridor. So in terms of the central bike path, that corridor is actually already complete in terms of easements owned by the city or easements that need to be acquired by through the railroad right-of-way. So that work would all occur through Public Works, and would be something that Parks, and this resolution, I can move to the second page here, essentially would be supporting and working in collaboration with Public Works and with the city to make these goals a reality. It does fall under the jurisdiction of Public Works, and Parks is in full support of the extension of the central bike path to the eastern and western urban growth boundaries, and essentially says that Parks is willing and eager to work with the city and community members to realize this goal.
Thank you. That's exactly what I prefer to reading it, because I did not want to give the impression that this was the final wording. So that explains exactly the reason for doing it and the key items in it.
Actually, I don't think it totally explains the resolution. It does a lot of explanation, but the other part of it is that the question that's begged is, well, why don't we just make the change on our map? And this indirectly does make that case, but I think I defer to Interim Director Eldridge in terms of explaining why we don't just make the changes, because it isn't that we don't agree with the changes, but it is problematic. And in fact, maybe to give you a helping hand, I don't know if this would really be useful for a whereas addition, but it does speak to that question. And that would be add a whereas that, whereas the comments and concerns related to adding the central bike path to the Parks, Trails, and Open Space map were received after over a dozen public meetings on the subject and were held, and making changes at this point would require redundant use of staff time and significantly delay the map approval. So that, I think, may not be even worded very well, but that kind of is the gist of, hey, why don't we just make the changes? And I think that's what we're trying to say is we support these, the central bike path extensions. We support connecting the Greenway pathway to the central bike path. They're kind of out of, it's not really our purview in lots of cases, but there are some pieces of property that aren't included on the map plan that would have to be purchased, either easements or land purchase to extend. And so that isn't on the plan. But I think there is a good reason for it, and that's why we're writing the resolution. But I think Interim Director Eldridge could probably explain it better than I can. Or not.
I thought I did
Yeah.
5 minutes ago.
Yeah, we're there. Commissioner Lewis.
I was part of both the Trails Master Plan, the first one and the revision, and so that's a resolution the way I look at it. I see this is somewhat superfluous because we are so bought into connectivity in this town that the Trails Master Plan represents that, and it's not just trails for bikes and peds up on the hill. It's for the whole community, and so there was so much talk about the central bike path. I want people to email me how we're going to extend that towards Medford until it's rails to trails. I mean, it's just the practicality and the pragmatism of me. I live right near the bike path, and I walk it all the time, and I somehow, maybe I don't have the vision, but I'm not sure how it's going to extend that easily. It's going to have to get on regular roads and have a route, which is, we could designate that tomorrow, and it would be the extension of the central bike path, but it's not going to be this railroad right-of-way thing. I mean, it's just, like I say, somebody tell me how that's going to happen. So there was a lot of emails about extending the central bike path, and I'm all for it, but unless I get my magic wand out, I don't know how that's going to happen. So, thank you.
I'll make a comment. Yeah, I mean, to me, if I'm pulling this all together, the idea is that the decision-making purview is not really ours, and certainly the level of detail that Commissioner Lewis is talking about is that's not within the purview of this body, but I think it is nice that we're putting something together along the lines of what we informally said at our study session, which is that we as a group of commissioners are very supportive of human-powered transportation and connectivity in our community, and the Central Bike Path certainly is representative of that, and anything we can do to increase connectivity. The idea that we have this wonderful path and it kind of floats, and there's things for it to connect to on either end of town, and so looking for opportunities to expand that. It came up at one point when we were talking about East Main Park, where the bike path goes right close to Lower Clay, but it doesn't quite get there. And so kids that are wanting to get from their school along the Central Bike Path to the new park we're going to build on East Main are going to be forced to pop out on Ashland Street and go over the railroad tracks, or try to carry their bikes over the railroad tracks, neither one of which is very appealing. And so any opportunity we can do to increase connectivity for people who either can't drive or choose not to drive in our community, I think is really wonderful. And even the place where it sits outside of our purview to make formal decisions, to be able to sort of line up with the members of the community that have been sending us emails and say, yeah, we agree. And it's great to have Jeff here, and I know Eric Hansen's on the transportation subcommittee, and I know that that human-powered transportation is something that's important to members of City Council as well. So I look forward to being able to work with our friends there.
What I think the goal was for putting this on the agenda tonight was to move it forward so that we can have a resolution in February that we can actually approve. So that's actually twofold: to get it approved, but also to line it up with the open space plan, because that's what people have been saying. They want us to do more on the open space plan, and this is our attempt to do more, is by putting this resolution, moving it forward. So I've actually gotten a few, I've seen some modifications that I'd just like to share. with this proposal. It actually came from our Parks Director. And the first is, in the first whereas, to just, even though it's true, to just leave off the last phrase, beginning with.
Repeating.
Oh, I'm not able to highlight. And have
Where it
expressed
says,
concerns.
and have expressed concerns. That, just delete that. It's all true, but again, we're trying to communicate something, and anytime we can shorten it, I think that's a real plus. So I suggest that we do that. And that, again, that was Interim Director Eldridge's suggestion. And the other is in the long be resolved, the first of the two be resolved, is to combine 3 and 4 and just say researching the feasibility of extending the west and east ends of the central bike path. So that means there's 4 points now rather than 5. So just again, trying to make it a little simpler. And then the other one was, let's see. Oh, okay, the second whereas. To read something slightly different than what it says, to say something like, the Trails Master Plan is part of the city's transportation system plan and is the definitive city document outlining the vision of trails and pathways in and around Ashland. So it's just emphasizing that it's part of the city's transportation system plan. So I thought those were good additions, and except this last one actually extends it a little bit, but in general, these suggestions shorten the document, and I think that that's wise. So as we move forward, I would like to see those changes to the resolution. And I'm happy to see at least one nodding head.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
We will go that direction. Next item is action, for action. And it is the technical support document for parks, trails, and open space map, and that'll be handled or introduced by Interim Director Eldridge.
Okay, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get these. Oh, I can. Fantastic. Okay. So what is before the commissioners tonight are a few items. One is, and these are all to be hopefully potentially approved by the commission and moved to the Planning Commission for January 26th meeting. So the first map that's up before you is what is known as the final Parks, Trails, and Open Space map. This is the official map that would be adopted and placed in the Ashland Comprehensive Plan in place of the 2002 map that was last fully brought through this legislative process. So this map has been before the commissioners several times before. We've been through modifications, and Planning Commission has seen it at a study session as well. Of course, after Planning Commission, it will go to City Council for a study session and or first and second reading. So this is one of the pieces. The other is what we're calling a comparison map, and that is for greater ease of understanding. Planning asked for this so that citizens and various commissioners and city councilors can see what parcels have been removed from the plan since 2002. So the main difference between these two maps is that this comparison map has several golden colored parcels that have been removed for various reasons. Either they've been developed or they no longer serve the purpose. Maybe there's already been a park established within a quarter mile and that parcel is no longer needed. We've reviewed all of these at length. I want to just note that both of these maps, although it might be hard for different folks to see depending on your screen resolution, they have an overlay that is a purplish blue transparency overlay that represents the Trails Master Plan corridors. That includes the central bike path, the TID, the greenway, and all of the critical corridors that were identified in the Trails Master Plan and are also part of the Ashland Comprehensive Plan already. So that is to call out the relationship between the Trails Master Plan and this Parks, Trails, and Open Space map, and the relevance of anything within those corridors when it came to parks justifying a decision to acquire an easement or a donation or purchase land. So anything within that Trail Master Plan corridor is absolutely a priority, and that is our way of sort of paying homage to the Trails Master Plan, which has already been through that process. So might be easy to overlook, and it's also, I think, a clever aesthetic way of showing this without making the map totally unreadable. So in my opinion, we do call out the central bike path as well as those other corridors in a way that hopefully is elegant, but also gets across the need for those connections. So those are the two maps, and then there is the technical support document that is the findings. That is essentially, well, I should go back to the comparison map. If you notice, the official map does not have all this text over on the right-hand side. The text on the right-hand side tells the story of the decision-making strategy for commissioners, what has changed in our strategy for acquiring lands, how Parks has moved from a place where acquiring and creating discrete parks and making developed parks accessible to all residents within the city limits, within a quarter mile, has largely been achieved. And the new official map represents a pivot on the part of Parks to prioritize connectivity, access, and riparian connection, as well as forestry and fuels management. So that tells that story, and that's that technical support document that is that's in your packet. So what we're looking for today is a potential approval of the technical support document, which becomes part of the findings that moves with the maps. The comparison map, which will disappear, it's purely informational for Planning Commission, City Council, and then the official map, which is, unless other changes get made as it goes through these process, that will be the document that is replacing the 2002 map within the Ashland Comprehensive Plan.
Before we go to any motion and deliberation, does anybody have clarifying questions for Interim Director, Commissioner Lott?
You kind of answered this, but changes could still be made to the map at the Planning Commission level or at the City Council, correct?
Yes.
Anyone else? Do I hear a motion?
Actually, I think there's going to be more than one. There's going to be more than one motion. I'll start by, I move to approve the technical support document / findings for the Parks, Trails, and Open Space map.
I second that motion.
Commissioner Lott, would you speak to your motion? Or would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, but I think you've already heard it.
Commissioner Adams?
I'll second that.
Roll call vote, please. Oh, wait, other commissioners?
What I would just say
Thank
is
you.
that I think that we also looked at budget and what we really needed with looking at this map. So kudos for that.
Anyone else care to comment? Commissioner Lewis?
Yeah, and I would suggest anybody interested in the connectivity and the trail system and the open space should really look, when this gets adopted, look long and hard at it, because it answers a lot of questions, actually. And there was so much work involved in getting this all together, so much staff time, so much volunteer help, that it really deserves people who have sent us emails to go back and read this document and familiarize yourself with it, because so much of the stuff ends up dusty, getting dust on the shelf, and it's kind of sad because a lot of work has gone into this, and it's really, any community that has a trail system established is worth its weight in wildflowers. So I would just suggest to whoever's listening, read it.
Okay, I think we're ready for a vote.
Commissioner Lant,
Yes.
Commissioner Steffinger,
Yes.
Commissioner Adams,
Yes.
Commissioner Lewis,
Yes.
Commissioner Bachman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
I would like to take one moment to deeply express my gratitude to our GIS manager, Leah Richards, who probably did 15 official versions of this map. I think it's, in reality, she probably did more like 30. So thank you, Leah, wherever you are.
Commissioner Lant, I think you have another motion.
Yes. I move that we approve the Parks, Trails, and Open Space map as presented tonight.
I'll second that.
Anything to say, Commissioner Lant?
Kind of ditto to before. This has come up before us many times. I don't think we need to belabor it this last time.
Commissioner Adams?
I agree.
Anyone else? Okay, let's vote.
Commissioner Lant,
Yes.
Commissioner Steffinger,
Yes.
Commissioner Adams,
Yes.
Commissioner Lewis,
Yes.
Commissioner Bachman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Does Interim Director Eldridge, did we cover all the things you need to proceed?
Well, you might as well approve the comparison map as well, although I believe it's for illustrative purposes, but I would hate to have that need to be approved. So I think what you just voted on was the official map, and
Yeah.
why not? Why not have one more vote?
We'd like to just get this done tonight, so thank you very much.
We're on a
Commissioner Lant?
roll.
I need a clarification on what the map is called.
It's the Parks, Trails, and Open Space comparison map.
Okay. I move to approve the Parks, Trails, and Open Space comparison map as presented tonight.
Second.
Nothing else to say? Nothing else? Anybody else? The vote, please.
Commissioner Lant,
Yes.
Commissioner Steffinger,
Yes.
Commissioner Adams,
Yes.
Commissioner Lewis,
Yes.
Commissioner Bachman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We'll now go to our last item on business tonight, which is the Freshwater Trust herbicide waiver. This is an action item, and once again, our interim director will just introduce our presenter.
Next up, we have Eugene Weir from the Freshwater Trust coming to discuss blackberry control at Bear Creek and Ashland Creek for the purposes of the riparian restoration and the cooling water, what is it called?
Water quality trading.
Water quality trading program, yes.
Thank you, Leslie. And thanks to the commissioners for having me here to talk about this important subject tonight. I appreciate it. I'm going to give you a quick presentation. I will try to keep this to like 15 minutes and have an opportunity for questions afterwards. I want to bring folks who are not familiar with the program up to speed and provide some updates on what we've accomplished so far. Is that good? And then why we're here back asking again for another 3 years of waiver to facilitate the application of herbicide to noxious weeds on these properties and these projects. I am a resident here of Ashland since 1996. I am employed by the Freshwater Trust. I've been there for 12 years developing projects of this type throughout the Rogue Valley and in the Rogue system. I am the program manager for the Freshwater Trust activities here in the Rogue. A little bit of framework here for the Water Quality Trading Program, WQT program as we often refer to it. This is a compliance-based restoration program. So this is helping the city of Ashland or other municipalities like the city of Medford that we work with as well to comply with their water quality or their NPDES discharge permit for the wastewater treatment plant. Essentially, they need to meet certain standards to keep water quality good here in the valley and in the Bear Creek system. Temperature is a big part of that. And this program allows the city to engage in restorative actions in the watershed instead of building gray infrastructure components at the treatment plant to address the same issues. So in this case, the regulated entity is the city of Ashland. They've contracted with the Freshwater Trust to work and develop this program, basically develop the credits that they need to demonstrate compliance. We then subcontract with local practitioners, businesses. We work with landowners, supply chain that supports restoration, and we implement these projects, and then we take them through a third-party verification process where they're certified, and eventually we serialize the benefits, in this case, the thermal load or kilocalories of solar energy blocked from the stream gets serialized into a credit. The city of Ashland then uses those credits to demonstrate compliance. This is a 20-year program. Every project has to comply to performance standards for a full 20 years. My background, I started out about 15 or so years ago working at Rogue Valley Council of Governments, implementing a lot of riparian restoration associated with dam removals and other projects we were doing. And back then, we were mostly doing this work with a lot of volunteers. It was not professionalized. We coordinated volunteers. We all worked as hard as we could, planted things, and then crossed our fingers and really hoped that they would succeed. When I came to the Freshwater Trust, we took on a very different approach. Now we had to succeed. It was not a cross your fingers and hope for the best. It was we must succeed. So we began implementing some different techniques. And this was the first project I developed out on the Rogue on a private property. And the local practitioners, when I invited them out to have a look at it, were really scratching their heads. This doesn't look anything like the kind of restoration we've done in the past. And is it going to work? Not very many years later, I'm standing with the landowner on that property, and that exact location looks like a very healthy, robust riparian area, very diverse and dense. It has since turned into something even more beautiful with like 30 to 40 foot tall trees and a lot of diversity in there. So building on the success of the work we did with the Medford program, we began working for the city of Ashland. Ashland engaged us to develop a similar water quality trading program for the city. We had essentially 4 years to implement that program and a year lead up to it. We're at the end of the program now. We've implemented 9 projects so far, and we're implementing the last one, the 10th project, which will finish the program. We're ahead of schedule, and we're attempting to block 135 million kilocalories of solar load. I think we will exceed that. And so this program is in a really good place. It has generated a lot of really good high quality restoration up and down the Bear Creek corridor. When you see 35 acres, you think, oh, maybe 35 acres isn't that big, but you stretch that out at 50 to 60 foot wide down the stream, and that equates to several miles of stream restoration here from this program. But tonight we're talking about 3 projects that are part of this program that are hosted on City of Ashland or Ashland Parks properties. And that is Bear Creek 23.5, which is the Hardesty and Ponds property. It straddles both. Riverwalk Park, which we call 24.8. These are river miles. And Ashland Creek 0.2, which is the Ashland Ponds area. These programs, what really kind of makes the compliance restoration different than, standard kind of practices is the performance standards. This is the table of performance standards this program is held to, and that will be evaluated every 5 years. We have a third-party evaluation on progress. And so that's where you see these targets are listed in 5-year increments over the 20 years. Most of these are not hard for us to hit. We can do better than 25% cover. We can do better than 1,600 stems per acre on these sites. And we can do better than 5 native plants or, species in the mix. But the really challenging part of this performance standard is the less than 10% invasive species cover for the full 20 years. And I think that part of why you see the hardest standard to achieve being associated with the control of invasive species is because these performance standards are meant to reflect a healthy riparian area, and that's what we're trying to create here. Weeds are a major part of what degrades these places and causes them to be low functioning over time. So what we're talking about here is trying to stay within that 10%, particularly for woody species like blackberry, over 20 years on all these projects. We want to do that because, well, native plants are awesome. They're beautiful, they're resilient, and they are the basis of all the food chain for the wildlife that we appreciate, from pollinators all the way through fish. And native plants are just, you know, the more of them we have in our communities, the stronger we are, the better off we are. And these programs are really generating that. In addition, you know, there's been a lot of talk about climate resilience. We're facing a lot of droughts. Things have been tough here water-wise, and our streams are heating up and drying out. Nowhere really more than Bear Creek at this point. And this, you know, in 2019, when I first came to the commission, we were launching this program. An article came out in the Journal of Water Resources, and it was studying stream temperature and the things that could influence stream temperature. What are the best activities to do? And what these researchers identified was that riparian restoration was the best activity that you could do to mitigate stream temperature. But the part that was really encouraging about it is that they found that if the top priority riparian restoration projects were implemented in the watershed they were studying, which was the Upper John Day, that the stream could actually be colder in 30 years than it is today, even under the most aggressive climate change scenario. So to me, that's really encouraging, because that tells me that, hey, we know how to do this kind of activity. It's a fairly simple activity, and it has the ability to really buffer our streams and perhaps equate to having salmon here in 30 years, even if our world is a lot warmer than it is now. So that's a big part of the motivation we have. And then in the Alameda fire, we learned a lot about resilience. This is a project we had in Talent. The fire burned through this entire restoration project, which had been done a few years before the fire. But because there were no invasive species in there and it was all native dominated, it burned at a much lower intensity and actually ended up being like the only piece of live vegetation left in that whole area of Talent. And in fact, the only house that survived in this area was nestled up against that project. So the riparian area actually buffered that home. Turned around, looked down on the other side of the street where it was not restored. It was a total wipeout, and that community burned to the ground. And we've had to invest a lot of money into bringing that into some higher functioning condition, whereas the restored riparian area bounced back with almost no input from us. So it was really encouraging. To get to this subject, history of approval, we came to Parks in 2019 when we were beginning to frame up this program and get it going. We were aware of the herbicide or the IPM policy that the city has, and that prevents the use of pesticides, herbicides, things like that in city parks. And we requested a waiver to that policy to support using herbicide to control noxious invasive species within the specific project areas that we are managing on parks properties over the 20 years of this program. So they're like leased project areas that we have a codified access to for 20 years. Parks, obviously there was some good discussion that took place. We also toured some locations where restoration had been happening for years before, where we'd used herbicide to control weeds. The commissioners at that time were pretty impressed by the progress that we'd made and the quality of those native plant communities. And we were granted approval for 3 years to utilize this waiver to support our work. The waiver became active in December 2020 when we did our first treatment over at the Hardesty property at Bear Creek 23.5. And it is now expired or up for expiration. We're back here asking for another 3 years on this waiver to support treatment work. We've made some great progress, but we're not completely free out of these weeds. Things are not free to grow. And we do have some new weeds that are potentially problematic, and we want to have this tool to be able to deal with them if we do find them on site. There's been there's a lot of reasons to support this. Essentially, this work that we're doing has been done well over the last 3 years. We've had generally good support from the public and park users that we interact with on these projects. We're talking to them all the time down there about things that are happening and why and what we're doing. It's been turning our parks into more usable, enjoyable spaces by suppressing noxious invasive weeds and allowing the public more access and more visibility of native plants versus morasses of weeds. And we think we can continue to do this very judiciously and carefully in a way that is only beneficial to these park properties. I want to show you a little bit of progress. This was the first project, and this is the one that straddles the Hardesty Ponds property. On the left, you've got some early project photos. 2 years later, you got a nice wall of alders going in there. You can notice some of the star thistle there, and so there's a lot of different weeds we're tackling. Not all of them will interfere with native plants being established, and so we've prioritized the ones that are a problem and not treating everything that's not native. Again, blackberry wall, pre-project, post-project, we've got plantings in there. It's continued to evolve. The image on the right is most recent, 2023, and we've got a pretty nice plant community growing in there right now. Riverwalk Park, it's a fairly large project, almost 7 acres, takes up all the bottom land at Riverwalk and along the bank up there by North Mountain. Again, treated that, was pretty much, that park almost more than anywhere was really covered in blackberry pre-project. We mowed that out, we've treated it, we were regrowing native plants. You can see it's changed quite a bit in there. This spot, previously, you couldn't even see the creek. Now you can see it, and you're looking at native plants as you do. Eventually, these native plants will grow up, and they will block the view again, but they're much easier to push through to get to the stream than blackberry. And so if you're motivated, you can enter a native plant community a lot easier than you can an invasive plant community. And we've got Ashland Ponds. This project has been in for a couple of years now. It's doing great. It was a fire impacted area before we started, so that removed a lot of the blackberry thatch, but didn't necessarily take away the roots. Our contractor at this project has asked us to give them a chance to prove that they can do this project without herbicide. And so we have been working with them over the last couple of years to do manual and mechanical weed control treatments at this site. But it is part of why I would like to keep this waiver active for another 3 years, because we do not know for sure if that's really going to work in terms of meeting the performance standards that we need to hit for this program, but we're giving it a shot. And this is another example. You can kind of see it's just a little weedier there, and that is part of what we're having to tolerate in order to try to do it by hand. But this is a really heavily used area by school groups. We saw one there today. We don't believe that the use of herbicide, to treat these weeds very targetedly poses any risk to students or anybody that accesses these parks. But we wouldn't want school group teachers to not take their kids down there because they had some feelings about it, whether they were justified or not. So we're trying hard there. A little bit about volume. So, Bear Creek 24-8 Riverwalk, there's been 9 treatments. In total, 82 ounces of herbicide were applied over that time on that 6.5 acres. Generally at this point, our latest this year, we're using 5.3 ounces to treat that entire 6.7 acre property. So pretty low amount of herbicide. We're using glyphosate at a 2% mix, and then we're adding dye and sometimes a surfactant. So this is just the herbicide volume that's in there. 23.5, we used a little bit more. We had challenges there because many of the weeds got burned in the fire, and so we weren't able to treat them ahead of the project like we often do. And then Ashland Creek, only one treatment occurred there, and that was right after the fire. We treated blackberry that was coming back in October, almost, just a month after the fire. And it was just a way to try to knock that back down before it really got any energy again. I did a quick search on Google and I found that, just for food crops, and this is soybean or corn, recommended applications of glyphosate in the 0.75 to 1.5 pound per acre range. So I'm just trying to frame this up. It is a chemical product, but we're using very little of it relative to the amount of landscape we're treating and the benefits we're getting. Lots of reasons to support this, I think, and a lot of things to be proud of in this. But really, for us, a big part of it is trying to keep consistency through all of the projects across the entire program. We have approval to use herbicide in all the other municipalities up and down the Bear Creek corridor where we do these projects, and those approvals were granted for 20 years. In the City of Talent, City of Phoenix, City of Medford, on down the line, Central Point. They see the value in this much the same way the commissioners saw it early, but they granted us a blanket approval. I'm only asking for another 3 years here because I think that there is a lot of value to checking in periodically about this work and also opportunities to educate the public about the gains that we're getting here. So we're asking for 3 years unless the commissioners would like to extend it because you don't want to have to deal with me again in 3 years. I just want to show you some of the other progress. This is on the old Billings Ranch. Bear Creek 22.9, so this extends the impact from Ashland Creek on down quite a ways. This project is the entire frontage of the City of Talent, Bear Creek 18.8. This project is a big chunk of floodplain above Blue Heron Park in Phoenix. This project is South Medford and some of Phoenix. Over a mile long. This is the biggest one in the program. And this project's the one we have under development right now in the City of Central Point, which is their entire frontage along their city in I-5. And then we've done some really cool little projects with private landowners here in Ashland where we've converted essentially their front yards back into riparian areas that they once were. So this program has really been doing a lot of good. It really helped all the communities of the Bear Creek Basin respond to the fire. And consistency across all these projects is really important for both keeping the city in compliance as well as efficient management of these programs over that 20-year period. I think native plants are what we want, and they're what we're going to need in the future. And this work helps to support the development of more high-quality native plant communities on Ashland Parks properties. So we request that you guys consider extending the waiver for another 3 years to allow us to continue to do the work that we've been doing. And I will take any questions with that.
Thank you. Commissioner Seffinger.
Yeah. I've worked on projects like this before long ago. The importance that we found in doing it was that you need native plants for the native animals and insects and fish. And so it's looking at the whole part of what this does. We had a lot of, I don't remember if you remember the Japanese knotwing and how we should treat that. We went over that a number of years ago, and found that every community had to do something or else the Japanese knotweed would just go down the river. So it was very important to have a unified front. So I really recommend support of this.
Thank you. And knotweed is one of our top priority weeds that we would utilize herbicide as a tool to control or kill.
Commissioner Lewis.
Yeah, thank you, Eugene, for the presentation. And I think reducing the thermal load of the streams is a huge economic value to the city as far as dollars and cents. But the reduction of the Himalayan blackberries is as we saw during the fire, was kind of catastrophic, but the damage done. But in 2019, I think when you first started this, you mentioned Butte Creek as one of your really early demonstrations, and you had some pictures of that, so hopefully that's looking great as well.
Yeah, there's a project at Denman Wildlife Area on Little Butte Creek was the first one that I developed around 12 years ago. And if you go there today, you can't really tell that a project occurred. You just see high quality native plants and trees, and it looks beautiful, and that's what we want. Ultimately, the plastic netting and irrigation systems and mulch and things that we use on these projects will be removed. We're already starting to remove it now, like the Hardesty project just got cleaned up. So within a few years, these go from looking like a kind of a farm project to a natural area again, and that's when the users of these parks will really start to reap the rewards of having this on the park properties.
Commissioner Long?
Yes. Are there any changes in the waiver compared to the 2019?
Yeah, in looking through the various restrictions or things that we put on it in 2019, I'd made a couple suggestions, I think, in this to change. And one of those had to do with the notice. I think that, we would like, it's hard for us to notice 48 hours ahead of a treatment because oftentimes we're trying to straddle weather, contractor availability. Sometimes those calls get made pretty much like morning of. We would, but we were willing to honor that. I did request that the waiver extend beyond 50 feet. I didn't realize that we'd been limited to 50 feet in 2019. 50 feet from the stream is generally where we're doing most of this work, but at the Riverwalk property in particular, we chose to restore that entire bottomland, knowing that if we didn't treat everything, that there was a good chance that weeds would spill back in. And also the stream is fairly connected to its floodplain in there, and so it can be dynamic, which means it may find a new channel sometime in the next 5, 10, or 15 years, and we want to make sure native plants are backed up all the way across that whole area so that wherever that channel goes, there's trees there to shade it still. So I would like to ask that the waiver be applied to the land where the Freshwater Trust manages these riparian projects. And these are established agreements that we have with parks for the long term on these projects. So just to those areas, if we can restrict it to those rather than having a specific from the stream distance, I think it will help us comply with the.
Are those the only two changes you're requesting?
I think so, unless you can remember. I think there was a third point, and I'm trying to remember what it was.
I'll speak to those changes when we get to discussion. But,
okay.
And then I've actually spoken with you before the meeting about this. I have some concerns about blanket using the state's list as opposed to a more specific list. The good news is that we have a record with Freshwater Trust that's been positive, and I have a personal relationship with you, which is positive. But at the same time, I'm always a little hesitant to give blanket or such a broad waiver. When so many plants are involved, and some are really seem to me that either they could be like English ivy could be dealt with mechanical means, and anyway, so that's just an example. So I guess I'd like you to, if you would, speak to why, how judicious you're going to be, and why you want such a broad waiver.
We asked to snap this to the treating of species that are listed on ODA's noxious weed A and B list, primarily because that's where new weeds will pop up if they're really going to pose a threat. And so if garlic mustard, say, which has been, is on there already, shows up in one of our sites, then we know, okay, it's an A-rated weed. We've got to do something about this. And I think that it also keeps us from, it restricts us from spraying things like non-native pasture grasses that we might not like, but don't really pose a huge hazard to, the environment. They're not really blocking the progression of the woody plant community. So we're really trying to stay focused on the weeds that the state has identified as noxious, which means that they're poisonous or they're, hazardous to people or they're a fuels issue or things like that. So, I think that if we stay restricted to that list, we're really avoiding treating everything that's non-native because there's a lot of non-native plants out there we're not worried about. I would like to, have the liberty to work within that list because sometimes things pop up. They may not seem like a problem now, but suddenly they become a problem. And ivy is not a high listed target, but it is on that list because it can, create some pretty significant problems when it gets going.
And just for, how many plants are on that list? It's over 100, is it not?
Between the A and B list, there's quite a few.
Yeah.
What we do is we have a booklet of the top targets on our projects. And that includes the knotweed, the blackberry, poison hemlock. And we give that, it's a list of basically identification and then how to treat it, when to treat it, best practices associated with that weed. There's about 15 or so weeds on there that are the prime targets and that our contractors are focused on. But if something new comes up or we realize something is causing a problem that hasn't so far, and it can be somewhat just site unique or even one part in a site, we'd like to have the flexibility to be able to get rid of it if herbicide is the correct tool to use. Now, if mechanical or hand methods can be used, star thistle is a great example. It does no good to spray star thistle once it starts to flower or really get going. You just have to hand pull it. So we try to use the best practices, not just go to spray every time.
And maybe my last question, if you were asking for a waiver for the time of notification, what standard would you be proposing for the standard for notification?
My proposal would be to follow the label. Like they say, the label is the law. So if the product we're using, glyphosate in this instance, you post ahead of the application, and once the cure period is passed, which is weather dependent, it could be 2 hours, it could be 4 to 6 hours, depending on what the weather's doing. Once the product's dry, the label says that re-entry is okay. If we want to go beyond that, we can leave those signs up. It's a lot easier to leave the sign up after the treatment than it is to try and get it there a couple days before the treatment. And so leaving the sign up for a longer period of time is much more easier for us to work with than pre-notification.
Thank you.
And I did remember I think the other point that was brought up around the staff report on this was the restriction of whether we would apply in the spring or just in the fall. And we typically focus on fall treatment of blackberry because that's when it's most effective. But doing a spring pass on these projects to control poison hemlock is also been shown to be pretty beneficial for us. So that's something we would like to continue to do.
So before it was only fall, you didn't have...
There was mention, I don't know that it was an actual restriction, but there was mention about the treatments primarily occurring in the fall, and I just wanted to clarify that although that is the focus for blackberry and any woody species, some of the fleshy problematic species like poison hemlock are best treated in the spring before they get a chance to shoot up their seed head.
Any other questions? I'm prepared to entertain a motion.
Before the motion, I just would like to say that I'm
Rick, can you talk into the microphone?
Sure. Oh. Gee, I thought I'm always the one who has to tell people that. Okay. I think that minimizing herbicide use is the right thing to do. I voted for the waiver in 2019, and I'm prepared to vote for it again. But I do think, and I'm even with the expansion of the, what was the first one?
Of weeds, like in garlic mustard?
No, that's already in there.
Okay.
But let's see. So we have the the distances, I think, it's really reasonable. I think that was just an oversight before. It's like giving a number to, it doesn't make sense. You want to look at the topography. The topography is so much more important than some than some standard number. And what was the other waiver you wanted?
The other change?
Yeah.
Just
the timing, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the timing of the notification. I think there is no reason to change the after. I think that's reasonable. You were able to manage with the 2-day, before, and I don't see that we really need to change that. We're trying to really communicate with a very sensitive population. A lot of people really care about herbicides. They don't like the fact that you're putting any herbicides on there. And I think honoring that is worthwhile. So I guess I'm ready to make a motion that we approve another 3 years of a waiver, that we also extend the area of treatment to include the entire project area. Is that-
Yeah, the entire leased project area would be good language to use.
And that we, the rest of the stipulations in the waiver, that would remain the same.
I'll second that motion.
Did we get that, the language?
Did you get it?
I can get it from the recording.
Okay.
If I get all of it, thank you.
And we have a second. Would you like to speak further to your motion?
Again, I think I've spoken.
Okay. Commissioner Adams?
Yeah, Eugene, I just want to thank you for your presentation. If you want a more blanket thing, then I suggest you get much worse at this than you are now. I for one, really enjoy hearing you speak. I love hearing about the work that you're doing, expertly presented. I, like Commissioner Seffinger, have a little bit of background in this, having done a master's degree in ecology before going into medicine, and just love to see some of the stuff that I learned about all that time ago put into practical application in our own homes, and thinking about a future of Bear Creek not being choked by blackberries, but instead surrounded by native species that are cooling the water and making it a hospitable place for fish. I'm sure coming up here and speaking in a public setting about applying glyphosate around Ashland is probably something that has a little bit of sweat under your collar, though you look very calm, cool, and collected up there. And the way that you described it tonight, and the way that your teams are using it judiciously, even experimenting with non-herbicide clearing. I just really appreciate your presentation, and I'm wholeheartedly in support.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Lewis?
Yeah, I would agree with Commissioner Adams. One thing I notice is you're the Freshwater Trust, and I do trust your judgment in this. And also, I can go down to the Grange Co-op tomorrow and buy an unlimited supply of Roundup and Crossbow, and your neighbors can as well. So we can't forget that part is there's no restriction on glyphosate in this community, which, I would be the first one to pick it down there at the Grange and shame people from using it. But that's the reality, and the amounts you use and the amounts we reduced back when we did our IPM plan, I was really thrilled with the community support and our actions that we took back then. And so we've reduced glyphosate use tremendously. So I just want to make that point is
Thank you.
We're not outlawing glyphosate in this city in any stretch of any imagination. So
yeah. And I'll remind commissioners that in 2019 we had this discussion. We decided that glyphosate was the only product that Ashland Parks was comfortable with applying to these sites. Many of our contractors have found that a kind of a 1-2 punch between a triclophor-based product and a glyphosate product is more effective against blackberry on a one pass. But It introduces yet another chemical. Thing about glyphosate is it has a bad name. It's in the media, but it's the most studied herbicide in the world. It's the thing we know the most about. And so it's the thing that we feel like we can handle and apply in the safest way, understanding what it does, how it moves through plants, how it translocates, does it end up in soil, for how long, all those kinds of things. So we're willing to stick to that, even though, new, better techniques have been evolving amongst the applicators. But I think, we've been effective so far here, and we'll continue to try to do the same. No reason to change that at this point. And, I did notice that in the overview of all the parks properties, a good chunk of them are riparian properties, a lot of them. And it's going to be important for us to consider as a community, in the long run, are we going to maintain all those properties at a higher level, thinking about the risk they pose if they're not maintained and the values that we get out of them when they are maintained. So, I hope that we can keep having these conversations, and I hope that over time we'll be able to change public sentiment towards supporting perhaps treatment of these weeds in other areas outside of the freshwater trust project specifically. So.
Thank you, Mr. Ware. We have a motion on the table, as I was just reminded. So I'm going to call for a roll call vote.
Can you tell me who made the motion quickly? I'm sorry.
Second.
Okay, just wanted, Commissioner Lant,
Yes.
Commissioner Adams,
Yes.
Commissioner Lewis,
Yes.
Commissioner Bachman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, that brings us to the end of our business.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Ware. The next item is any other items from commissioners or staff? Seeing none, I'll continue to upcoming meeting dates. There is one, I'm going to mention this, not on this list of one, and that's our next meeting, business meeting, will be on the 7th. Typically, that would be a study session, but we're only having one meeting in February. So we'll be meeting on the 7th here to have our next business meeting. And then the other meeting is the Recreation Division Advisory Committee, which will meet on February 8th in person at the Lithia Cabin at 4 p.m.
Is that the senior advisory?
Senior advisory, next senior advisory meeting is in March on the 11th, and that will be in person. Let's have the director back here reminding me that every other meeting will be in person now for the Senior Advisory Committee. ASAC, Ashland Senior Advisory Committee. And with that, I think it's time to adjourn.